A very good afternoon to you and welcome. So I've been asked to follow up on the previous vlog, sequencing. Particular ask, thanks for this video. Would you please talk about your bookmaking process, how you put together your book you showed at the beginning of this video? Thank you. So, yeah, sorting the photos, compiling them, understanding the order in which you want to show them, that kind of thing. That's the difficult part. That's obviously the first part, but it's also the mind-numbingly difficult part. Not mind-numbingly as in bad. It's just difficult. I mean, very enjoyable in a sense. It is. It's very gratifying, but it takes an awful lot of time. Or at least it did me. I can only talk about me. And you know, I've spoken about it, so I'm not going to go over too much ground there. If you want to go and watch that first, then watch this, then maybe that's the better way to go. But essentially, once you have done that, once you have got those images together, and you've got a very clear sense of the rhythm and the pace and the edit, the sequencing. You know, I talked about various ways about doing it, and you'll notice in this book that I've not really used any of those techniques. Much of this book is about instinct. It's about, you know, there are no rules to it as such. I've just gone with what I felt looked best. There's no particular correlation. I mean, some people, when they're looking at a book, require structure. They want to see a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. And that's, you know, depending on what you do as a photographer will depend on your pacing, on how you want to sequence the images. For example, let's say you want to go out and photograph a fisherman out at sea for a week, and you end up with, I don't know, 300 images, and you whittle it down in the edit to 25 images. Some people will quite happily want to produce a zine, and they'll upload it, 25 images, not particularly great paper, keep the costs down, because they charge you per page, per image, or no, per page. And they'll sell it on Amazon for 25, 30 quid or something like that. Fine. Absolutely fine. And that's to make money. Whereas I knew right from the outset this wasn't about making money at all. In fact, it was going to cost me money. So, you know, but the object wasn't to sell it. The object was to compile the images and produce something that I was happy with, a platform, and then perhaps sometime in the future, at some point, maybe sell it, but maybe revise it, work on it, and that's what I'm doing at the moment. But let's just, you know, I'm just giving you some context here. Let's put that to one side. In terms of the actual dynamics, in terms of the actual uploading, so you've got to choose somebody. I chose Blurb. I read some reviews, I did some research, and I kind of felt fairly confident about using them. You're taking a bit of a gamble because, you know, never used them before, not quite sure how competent they are and all that kind of stuff. So there are no absolutes. The absolutes that I have is what I do, is what I give them. And so this has something like, I think it's 238, 239 images. That's quite a body of work. It's quite a lot to contend with there. And so, all my images, I can... It's almost a process of elimination. All my images are full frame. They're all shot on 35mm. So I don't have different shapes to contend with. I don't have some photographs that are squares, or some photographs that are oblong or stretched out, or anything like that. They're all 35mm. And that precise ratio. So, most of my images are landscape, probably about 80%, thereabouts. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe I should do a landscape book. And then when it comes to a vertical image, a portrait image, a vertical image, okay, that's going to be compromised. It's going to be a smaller image because you're fitting it onto an oblong shape, a landscape shape. So immediately I'm going, okay, no. I want them all to be exactly the right size, whether they're portrait or landscape. So, hence the square. So I can literally, at any point, show a landscape. I can then flick to, and they're all exactly the same size. So these, so that's I've established that. I've established what dimensions I want. Given, Blurb will give you certain measurements of size of book. So I established that. That's all quite simple. Then you've got to think about paper. As I said, if you're trying to make money at this, a zine, a 25-page booklet, you've got to keep costs down, which means the quality is diminished. But hey, how bad is the poorer, cheaper quality? Those are things that you've got to understand, and what your end goal is. For me, like I said, this wasn't a commercial venture. So, given that it's a life's work of photographs, and given that it's a private venture, this is for me and me only, I wanted the best quality paper. Not the most expensive, I just want to pay for the most. No. My decision making, so you had matte, you had gloss, and then you had the paper that I've chosen, which is the best and the most expensive. But that gave me it was like a semi-gloss. I don't know if you can really see it in this kind of light, but it just has a very subtle kind of gloss. And for me, that was beautiful, because it replicates what I used to print on, which was fibre-based semi-gloss Ilford gallery paper. And I wanted that kind of finish to my work. So another box ticked, another decision made. You've then also got to work out typography, what the size is, what the scale is, the positioning, whether there's going to be a front photograph, a back photograph, something on the spine. How do you want it to look? What's the feel of this? What's the layout? Now, when you upload stuff, you get these boxes, and it's very user friendly. You just literally drag and then drop the image in. And so all of the images are the same, as I say, the same size, same pacing, same kind of border, bearing in mind that, as you turn a page, especially on a hardback, you're getting this kind of, you're getting this sort of, until you get further on in the book. So can you still see the image with this without, pushing this right down, and so, or do you want a really small image on a big white page and loads of white? Well, that's a call you've got to make. That's something you've got to decide. Obviously, with the vertical ones, then it doesn't suffer from this page here. You've just got a big white border left and right. I'm doing this sort of the wrong way, but you get the idea. But it's they're still the same size. It's on that square format. And you just flip it over, or obviously you wouldn't, because it would be the wrong way around. But in terms of dimensions, that's kind of what I wanted. Very simple. You've got to work out numbering. Do you want to even put numbers on there? I decided minimum distraction, and I'm going to put the numbers on the opposite side of the page. And I think they're not black, it's sort of a grey colour. So you hardly notice them. You notice them if you look for them. So minimum distraction. You've then got to work out, do you want a page? Do you want an image on both sides? One here and one here. Now obviously, if you have one here and one here, you're saving an awful lot of paper. So if I'd done that, this book would be half the thickness and half the price. Well, I don't know about half the price, but it would have been a lot cheaper. But hey, I don't want that. I don't want distraction. And what page do you want it on? Do you want it on the left page, or do you want it on the right? Well, for me, I kind of felt like when I'm looking through a photographic book, I like to flick a little bit. I'm not looking over here. I'm always looking on the right side of the page. But that's just me. Again, it's your call. You've got to decide. But I think there are two things I would say. One is, once you've committed, once you've decided, and you've hit that send button, it goes away to print, and that's it. There's no turning back. So it's not difficult, but you've got to think what you want, where it's going to go, where it's going to end up, who's going to see it, is anybody going to see it, what's the purpose of this venture? It's all about decision making and getting it right. Do you want to do it as cheaply as possible? Don't watch this vlog, because this is not a vlog about how to save money when you're publishing a book. Not at all. This is the full hog. This is, no expense spared, I suppose. But that was my decision. I'm not making thousands of them. I'm not going to bankrupt myself doing it, but I want one that is absolutely exactly what I want. And that was just, in terms of one per page, isn't that a bit extravagant? Yeah, maybe, but as you look at it, there are no distractions, there are no other images, your eye isn't being taken somewhere else. So you can just not like the image, flip the page, or carry on looking, in your own time. With that white border, with that sort of, Again, that's another thing. Do you want a white border? Do you want a cream border? Do you want a purple border? These are all things, Again, my thing was a bit simpler because all my images are black and white. I haven't got to contend with colours and all sorts of different palettes and what have you, and what works with colour. That's just all eliminated. So, much simpler. And I can then concentrate on the rhythm. It's like anything, whether it's a book, a song, a film, it all has a pacing. It all has a rhythm, for at least good ones do, in my opinion. And And that was key for me when I was sequencing it. Again, that's the first section. That's the bit that takes all the time. It took me a lot of time. But hopefully you end up in a place where you're proud and you like what you've got. With this, I'll say quite happily, with the revised version that I hope to finish in June sometime, there are one or two that will come out and one or two new ones that will go in, ones that I've taken since I published this book. So, but the majority will be this book, pretty much the same format, pretty much the same layout. Now, when you're thinking about that, you see, here's the thing. Commercially, it makes no sense whatsoever to do what I'm doing. It doesn't. But I'm not doing it commercially. Commercially, if I were to sell this on Amazon, it probably cost about, I think it was, from memory, I think it was about £160. Well, maybe not that much, but that sort of ballpark figure. Who's going to spend £160 on a book? You could buy a Cartier-Bresson book this size for 70 quid. Do you know what I mean? So it makes no sense. You've got to sort of know the market a little bit. But again, like I say, I'm not selling it to anybody. I'm not trying to sell copies. I know that nobody's going to fork out that kind of money. It's just too expensive for. I'm not saying it's too expensive for people. It's just too. It's not commercially viable. So you've got to work that out. You've got to work out why you're doing it. The other thing I'd mention, there are two things. The other thing that I would say is when you're deciding what images, try and make certain that you don't repeat yourself. With 238 images in this book, it's very easy to repeat yourself. What do I mean by repeat yourself? We've all taken photographs of, I don't know, people walking a dog, for example. It's a bad example, but something along those lines. Very easy to end up with 10 photographs of somebody walking their dog. Don't put 10 photographs of somebody walking their dog in the book. It just... Pick the best one. Maybe there isn't the best one, but that's, again, your call. You've got to decide which is the best one for whatever reason, on whatever level. They might all be really, really good pictures of people walking their dog. If you're Elliot Erwitt, then they are, aren't they? But again, unless you're making a book about people walking their dogs or dogs, then it ain't really it's gonna jar, in my opinion. It's gonna be, this is just my opinion, okay? There's no right or wrong here. You've got to decide yourself. For me, when I flick some of these pages, I kind of go, where's the correlation here? Is there any correlation whatsoever? No. For me, it's about pacing. For me, it's about tone. For me, it's about... I'm not looking for correlation. I'm not looking for a structure here. There is a theme. I know it's the human condition. But I'm not judging it on that. I'm not editing it in that way. I'm editing it in terms of what I think looks nice, what I feel looks good, and that's I can't tell you what looks good. I can't because it's not. I can only do what I feel looks good with my particular work. So yes, be aware of there are some some suggestions that you can use. Like I mentioned in the previous vlog, you can use parallels and things that connect one image to the next. I talked about that. For me, it's a little bit gimmicky. It's almost like saying your images aren't strong enough. They need some quirky little thing to make it all hang together. I'm not trying to make these hang together. This is just a body of work taken over 40 years of, lads jumping off a pier or a jetty or whatever it is. They're one-off shots. They're not storytelling. They're not out at sea with a fisherman for a week, bringing in his haul. That's just it. There isn't that sort of narrative. There isn't that kind of story. For me, all the best films, all the best books, always have an ambiguity. Always have, they have more questions than answers. I don't like answers very much. People that want to tell you things. This is this. It's either black or white, and they don't want to discuss the grey or even acknowledge the grey. I'm always kind of skeptical about that. There are very few answers, in my opinion, in life, and so I don't want to thrust things, at people or stand on a pedestal. I've spoken about this previously, but that's not what I'm about. That's not what my photography is about, and therefore it would be absurd if I produced a book that was like that, because none of my work is. They're just one-off individual shots. I could have, because there are a lot taken around about Europe, I could have split it up into England, France, Germany, Italy, Spain. I could have done that, but didn't want to do that. Just you've got to think about these things, because that could have been a really good way of going about it. But again, it's putting things in boxes. It's giving it a rigidity, which to some people is great. There's nothing wrong with that at all, if that's what you want to do. For me, it just doesn't. It's not what I want. It's not what I want to say. I don't want to say anything. In actual fact, I just want the viewer to enjoy it or not enjoy it. It's as simple as that. It's not. It's just, sip your coffee. Turn the pages at your leisure, as quickly or as slowly. They're just images to absorb or not. Like, love, or be indifferent to. There's a large body there that you can just, even if you like the work, you're not going to like them all, or you're going to like some better than others, or not at all. It's just not your thing. But everyone's different. Everyone's got their own way of doing things. I've mentioned it before. It's just who you are. It's got to be for me, it's all about it being an expression of yourself, an honest expression of yourself. I'm not even a photographer. I don't even think of myself as. I'm not one of these people that goes out and takes photographs every day, and you've got to. The more you shoot, the better you get. Well, that's probably true, but I've been doing it for 40 years, so I think I've picked up a bit of know-how. And I do it when I feel like doing it. I don't make it, a labour of love. It's I love it when I do it, but sometimes I don't even look at a camera. Don't want to see a camera, But when I do, that's a different thing. I absolutely want to, embrace it and go and pound those streets and walk and see and feel and anticipate and all that excitement that you get with it. Sometimes I just feel as flat as a pancake, and it's the last thing in my mind. You know, it really is. So I'll go and do something else. I'll go and edit the next book or something. You know, there are so many different factions to photography that it's not all about taking the photograph. Ultimately, that's what it's about. But you know, there are other things. So yeah, there's, you know, I want to say there are, you know, sometimes, for example, there's a, you know, there are little correlations. I won't say that I'm absolutely immune to them, but they've got to be very subtle. I almost don't want you to see them. You know, case in point, there's, yeah, I mean, it's, I've spoken about those in the previous vlog, so I don't want to repeat myself. But there are ways, and sometimes I will just, yeah, marry something up, but it's got to be so subtle that you hardly notice. It's just something that I quite enjoy, but that's not really the reason why I've chosen to put that photograph after the previous. It's ultimately, it's got to look right as well. It's got to feel right. It's got to work with that overall pace. I mean, you know, this book is called Serendipity. The next book is going to have a different title. Again, you've got to think of a title. It's not easy. It's not easy. You know, I just chose a word that, at the end of the day, that actually depicts how I take photographs, and I love the sound of the word. Yeah. The next one is going to be, you know, a completely different title, and the structure will change. The structure will change. I don't want to talk about it yet because, yeah, it's not done. I'll talk about when it's done and why I did what I did. But that will have more of a beginning, middle, and an end. Not because I want to tell a story, but because, well, I don't want to, yeah. Yeah, it'll, yeah, I can't talk about it yet. When it's done, I'll talk about it. But yeah, it's not, I'm definitely not putting things in boxes or trying to make you think one thing or lead you somewhere. Again, it's about presenting something and letting the viewer, in my opinion anyway, letting the viewer being able to project their own sense and feeling and respond in their own way, in the way they want to respond or not. You know, it's not aggressive, it's not shouting, it's not dictating anything to you. It's just going with flow, seeing what is, and it, hopefully enjoying. That's, you know, it's kind of what it's about for me. So I think that's probably, I can't think of anything else. Just try and, you know, dot the I's, cross the T's. If you retouch your photos, however you do it, you can do it manually, or you can do it in Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever. You know, make sure that you've not missed anything. Go over them with a fine-tooth comb, expand them, make sure that they're the best versions, the best prints. Use TIFFs, don't use JPEGs. JPEGs corrode. So, you know, be sure that you've got the best version to upload. You might want to change them to JPEGs last minute, but make sure that image is as good as it can possibly be, because once you hit the send button, In terms of timescale, I think, I did this a while back. I don't know what they're like now, but I think it took about 10 days. And I don't want to advertise them because I'm not affiliated to them. They're not paying me for this. I just mention them as one suggestion. They were excellent. They were absolutely excellent. I didn't have to. There were no reprints. There were no, just boom. Through it went, and it came back in. As I say, I think it was about 10 days. It was amazing. I was absolutely flabbergasted. So all those kind of insecurities about the very few things sort of work out first time, but this did. And considering the number of images, I'd remembered one photographer saying, it's really important that you stand over the person while it's going to print, so that was a big worry in my mind. If I'm sending them the correct print, a good print, a print I'm happy with, in a particular order, a particular size, what will the reproduction be like? I'm bowled over with it. I'm really, really, couldn't be better. Couldn't be better. And I'm kind of fussy, well, when it comes to my photography, I'm kind of fussy. And yeah, it's just all the tones are there. Everything that I like in a print, I gave them, and they reproduced very, very well. So yeah, not recommending them or anything like that. Just saying, Anyway, I think that's it. If there are any questions, anything I've missed out, I probably have, feel free to ask me in the comments box. But for now, thanks very much for stopping by, and see you for the next one.